Hi, I'm May Newton, and you're watching The May Newton Show. My guest today is Casey Damus. Hello, Casey. It's good to have you here today.
Why, thank you, May. It is my pleasure to be here.
Tell me, Casey, what brings you here today?
Well, May, have you ever wanted to be another Nostradamus? Or maybe another Edgar Cayce? Or even Jean Dixon or Mother Shipton?
Oh yes, I'd love to learn how to spin the ball on my finger.
Wait, what?
And pass it to another player over my shoulder without looking.
Pass it? A ball?
Oh, and dribble it between my legs. And shoot 3-pointers.
May, Nostradamus, Casey, Dixon, and Mother Shipton were not basketball players.
They weren't?
No, they were psychics and prophets.
Prophets? I thought profits was the money you made from selling things like cookies and smartphones.
That is profit spelled P-R-O-F-I-T-S. I am referring to profit spelled P-R-O-P-H-E-T-S. A prophet is someone who makes a prediction.
And all these people are prophets?
Well, they are said to be psychics or prophets or both. Nostradamus was a 16th century French apothecary and seer who is said to have predicted things like the Great Lodge Fire, the rise of Napoleon, the rise of Adolf Hitler, World War I, World War II, 9/11, even the destruction of the Space Shuttle Challenger, among so many other things. Jean Dixon predicted in 1960 that John Fitzgerald Kennedy would win the presidential election but would be assassinated while in office. She also predicted in the early 70s that there would be terrorist attacks on American soil. Edgar Cayce was called the Sleeping Prophet by journalist and author Jess Stern. Cayce would go into a trance to preform his psychic readings and make predictions. He is credited with predicting the stock market crash of 1929, World War II, the use of blood in medical diagnosis. Among other things, the English prophetess, Mother Shipton, lived during the 15th and 16th centuries. She predicted the Great London Fire, the defeat of the Spanish Armada, automobiles, airplanes, the internet, and many other things.
And you're saying I can be a prophet just like these people?
Indeed, that is what I am telling you, May.
Awesome. Now what should I predict first?
May?
Oh, I know. I predict that in 2017 strawberry jam shall become the only legal jam or jelly or preserves in the US. And for my second prediction,
May?
I predict that on November 3, 2020 Tom Cruise will be elected president, and his vice president will be Captain Crunch. And for my third prediction,
May.
Huh?
I'm here to discuss how to be a prophet.
You mean there are rules to follow?
Not really, no, but in the 2000 edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac there was an article entitled, How to Become a Prophet. It gave 6 steps for would-be prophets to follow, and in 24 hours or less they could be a prophet. Step 1. Predict the past. This is one of the big 3 steps to follow.
Predict the past? That makes no sense. The past is over and done with. You can read about it in history books. And why would one want to waste their time reading about the past when they could read people?
That is not actually what they mean by predicting the past. The idea is to predict things that have happened in the past which will happen in the future. For instance, every 4 years the US elects a president. That has happened in the past and will happen again in the future. This is one possible example of what you want to predict. War has happened in the past and the chances are good it will happen in the future. A monarchy coronating a new monarch has happened, and as long as monarchies exist it will happen again. Hurricanes happen yearly, so expect them to happen in the future. There is at least one full moon a month. That is something to predict for the future. Some politician or celebrity will be involved in a sex scandal. It's happened in the past. You do not want to predict actual events from history themselves. Do not say the Japanese will attack Pearl Harbor on December 7th. It is the past, but it probably will not happen again. Nor should you say Britain's George VI will be coronated.
Why can't you predict actual events from the past?
Because they are too specific, which brings me to the next step. Avoid specifics, because specifics tell you too much. Imagine if you say that the world will end May 7th, 2017. People will be waiting for that exact date to see if you are right. Then when May 8th comes they will call you a crackpot, because the world did not end. Or imagine that in 1989 someone predicted that on November 5th, 2002, Mitt Romney would be elected governor of Massachusetts and he would then be elected President of the United States 10 years later. Today we know Romney was indeed elected governor of Massachusetts. But the second half of that prediction proved false. Yet the specifics told us it would happen. You want your predictions to be vague. All good predictions should be open to interpretation. For instance, let's say I were to predict a nuclear bomb detonating in Siberia 40 or 50 years from the turn of the 21st century. Instead of saying in 2045 a nuclear bomb will explode in Siberia on June 15th killing 1,000 people, I should say something like, and it shall come to pass 2 score or more years from the turn of the century in the time of Gem, like that in a land of ice and snow, there shall be a ball of fire as bright as 1,000 suns, and from the fireball shall rise a mushroom. This shall cause a great loss of life.
2 score? Are we playing sports? What is the score anyway?
No, May. Score is also a term for 20. When Lincoln said 4 and 7 years ago, he was really saying 87 years ago. 2 is just a fancy way of saying 40 years.
Oh, but you didn't say when it would happen. People need to know that on June 15, 2045, a nuclear bomb will explode in Siberia.
No, they do not, May. That is a specific. I told you all good predictions are about interpretation. I'll explain this more later. Step 3. Predict the obvious. This is largely just going over step 1 again. Obviously there will be a full moon each month. Hurricanes will occur, and so on. But step 3 is also about current events. You could say it is predict the predictable or the possible.
I don't get it. What do you mean predictable or possible?
Basically you predict things that people think will happen. Say a professional sports team has won every game they play through the first half of the season. It is predictable or possible that they will play in the championship tournament. Or a political candidate has 70% of the people supporting them 3 months before the election. It is predictable at that time they're going to win. You might have an event occur that greatly upsets a large percentage of the population. So much that you can see that riots will possibly break out. It is also predictable that the firstborn child of a monarch will succeed their parent. If it seems obvious or predictable that it will happen, then predict it.
So it would be a good idea for me to predict that a certain famous female who always seems to be posting sultry photos of herself online will still be doing so in 10 years.
I am not going to say that it would be a good idea. However, it certainly would be something to predict, as the public will likely believe that will be true.
Well, then I predict that she will still be posting sultry pictures of herself online 10 years from now. Was that too specific?
Maybe just a little, but you could have been more specific, as you could have given a date and a name.
What is the next step?
Step 4. Leave home.
Leave home. But I just paid off my tiny house. And what about my Hello Kitty collector plate set? My neighbor gave them to me as a housewarming gift, you know.
May?
It must have cost them at least $350 to get the set. Am I supposed to just sell the set? Oh, and there's my plants.
May?
I can't just let them die. And I am not about to give them to somebody who doesn't have a green thumb. I'm also not going to give them to a plant hater. And then I'd have to find a new
May?
job. Do you know how hard it is to get a job today? And another tiny house that looks just like Cinderella's castle. Well, maybe this time I could get one that looks like Barbie's dream house, but in periwinkle instead of pink. With some
May?
Huh?
Leave home does not actually mean that you have to move. What it means is that you say you come from far away from where you live. The idea is that people who know you probably will not take your predictions seriously because they are coming from you. But if you claim to be a mystic from some place they think of as exotic, then they may listen more to what you have to say.
But you're telling it to them. Won't they know who you are?
That is an excellent question, and the answer to it is yes. But only if you do so in person or over the phone. However, in this day of social media, you can open a page on a social networking site and give yourself an exotic name and location. Then you can post your predictions there. In this way you have left home, without actually leaving home.
Oh, I get it. You pretend to be someone else online.
Exactly. Now for step 5. Step 5 is to leave yourself an out. Think of this step as being a restatement of step 2. If you remember, step 2 was to avoid specifics, to basically be as vague as possible, and that all good predictions are about interpretation.
Yes, I remember that.
As I said earlier, I'd explain more about not giving specifics, and that all good predictions are about interpretation. Well, now is time to explain. Let's use the example of a nuclear bomb in Siberia. Remember that saying in 2045 a nuclear bomb will explode in Siberia on June 15th, killing 1,000 people. This is too specific. People know the what, the when, and the where. They will be looking to see if a nuclear bomb does indeed go off somewhere in Siberia on June 15th, 2045, and if 1,000 people die because of it. Then they will say, hey you idiot, you told us this would happen and it did not. Do you like being stupid? You see, leaving yourself an out means leave your predictions as open to interpretation as possible by being as vague and unspecific as you can. It is okay to be a little specific, as you were when you predicted a famous female would still be posting sultry photos online 10 years from now. You did not name the female, and there are a number of famous women who do that, and you did not give an exact date either. So you have a little wiggle room. But when a prediction is too specific, then you don't give yourself an out. By changing that Siberia prediction to and it shall come to pass 2 score or more years from the turn of the century in the time of Gemini, that in the land of ice and snow there shall be a ball of fire as bright as 1,000 suns, and from the fireball shall rise a mushroom. This shall cause a great loss of life. I have left myself an out because I have not said any specific when or where or how many shall die, or even exactly what causes those deaths. The time of Gemini could be seen as being during the time of the year when people are born under the astrological sign Gemini. That is May 22nd to June 21st. So if such a bomb goes off on June 19th rather than June 15th, I can say, did I say it would happen on June 15th? The same is true up to 2 score or more years from the turn of the century. I did not say the turn of which century, nor did I say exactly how many years after the turn of the century, beyond a minimum of 40 years. It could be 2040, 2158, 2241, 2349, or even 2460. While 2460 is actually 60 years from the turn of the 25th century, it is still 20 or more years from the turn of the century, and the land of ice and snow is meant to make people think of some place they think will be cold. That could be Siberia or Alaska or Antarctica, or any place they think is cold. The description of a fireball, as bright as 1,000 suns from which rises a mushroom, is meant to make people think of a nuclear bomb and a mushroom cloud. The whole prophecy allows me to deny any interpretation that does not come true. But more importantly, it means that people can interpret it in any way, and their interpretations can be right. And thus my prediction can be both right and wrong. I am not locked into a specific prediction.
That seems like cheating.
But it is not. It is all about how people interpret your prediction. You should not care if you are right or wrong. Your goal is to have people say you are a prophet, and being a prophet for most of us is more about how other people interpret your predictions.
If you say so. Okay, that's 5 steps. What is the last step?
Yes, the 6th and final step. This is also what I consider the last of the big 3. Step 6, predict interesting stuff.
You mean like predict which movie stars will get married? Or if my favorite singer will win a Grammy?
Precisely. I like to say that this step is also the know your audience step. Know who they are and what they are interested in at the time you make the prediction. There are 2 basic categories of predictions: long-term and short-term. Long-term predictions are predictions which will take many years, or even centuries, to happen. Short-term predictions are obviously the opposite of long-term. They will take place in the next few seconds to a few years from when you make them. Perhaps the longest time for a short-term prediction is just 10 years. All other types of predictions, such as end-of-the-world predictions, to sports predictions, to political predictions, to predictions about war, are able to be placed into both these categories. It just depends on how far into the future a prediction is meant for as to which it goes in. Now with long-term predictions this step is a little less important.
Why is that?
Because it is far into the future. It is questionable if most of us even plan for 10 years from now, let alone 15 or 20. You still want to predict interesting stuff for long-term predictions, but now your audience may not even be born when you make the prediction. So predicting an earthquake will destroy half of Paris in a couple hundred years will not be as interesting to people today as it will be in, say, 198 years from now. Of course, keep in mind that by keeping your predictions as vague as possible means that a long-term prediction could be interpreted as happening next week or 60 years from now. With short-term predictions you can be a little less vague about when the prediction takes place, though you still need to try to avoid specifics. But with short-term predictions, knowing your audience and predicting interesting stuff is even more important because you don't wish to bore them. If your audience is talking about popular television shows and the actors and actresses on them, then they are probably not going to be interested in a prediction about the stock market. People who do nothing but talk about basketball all day may not care about what is occurring in the world of automobile racing. Are they always talking politics? Perhaps they will be uninterested in who is going to die and who is dating who on some popular television show.
But how do you know what they are interested in?
Listen to them. If you are on a social networking site, read what they're discussing, and take the time to get a feel for your audience. Just because they just spent maybe an hour talking politics, does not necessarily mean that they are interested in politics. A week might show they are more interested in sports than in politics. With long-term predictions you are still looking to predict interesting stuff, but it is not for a specific audience. Short-term predictions you want to tailor to your audience. So you want to give them things they want to hear about, not things they will say big deal or who cares when you predict them.
And those are the 6 steps to becoming a prophet?
Yes. Let me recap. Predict the past. Avoid specifics. Predict the obvious. Leave home. Leave yourself and out. And predict interesting stuff.
Wow, thank you for that, Casey.
Thank you for having me, May.
Well, that's it for this episode. Until next time.